You know, I think about like here today in LA, there are so many like unbelievable young jazz musicians that seem like cut out to be jazz musicians. And even though they might have an interest in pop music, and might dabble in that, they're still looking at it through a jazz lens.
Right.
And I think that maybe those guys and the Dead probably, like, you know, were into other music, but and would look at jazz through their own lens, you know, whatever that might have been, through folk music. You know, I understand Jerry, you know, like was like a, you know, genius at acoustic music, you know, early on, and took an interest in that. So I think that there's like some similarities between, like, you know, country picking and jazz. And, you know, it's just not that there's like a place where they all, you know, those types of like blowing over tunes, like kind of, there's a common thread, you know, between jazz and, you know, Charlie Parker used to go into bars and put Patsy Cline on the jukebox, you know. So
I love this. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I mean, how did?
What's that?
I just wonder about like how you were brought up musically. I mean, were you ear trained first before you learned to sight read music? And were you even aware of labels growing up? I mean, I'm 42. I don't think I got into music till my early 20s, but I just wonder about some cat like yourself. Like, did you consciously make an effort to say, well, I'm going to get into reggae and I'm going to get into world music and all these labels, or was it all just music to Borge?
Well, as like from very young, because I started playing, I kind of gravitated towards the family organ. We had like a little Wurlitzer electronic organ.
Oh, man.
Was my stepbrother's Christmas gift, and he was 6 years older than me. So he took lessons. He was like 13 and I was 6 or 7. And I just, the story goes that we went to a church service one night, and we came home and I just went over to the organ and remembered some of the songs that were played, and I just started sitting down and figuring them out by ear.
Wow.
So the ear thing came first. And then learning how to read music, which was a struggle for me as young. I didn't really get into like reading music and like serious about like classical music and that sort of thing till I was in college. But I've always loved so many different kinds of music that it actually kind of, it ties me up sometimes, like creatively. I don't know which way to go when I'm if I want to write something, you know, I'll write things with melodies and lyrics. So I've written instrumental music.
Right.
How I ended up in a reggae band, even though I was definitely familiar with a lot of reggae music,
of course,
or some reggae music.
Of course, yeah.
You know, I didn't get a reggae gig because that was where that was my focus.
I did, yeah.
I've just kind of I'm into a lot of, I don't really just have much discrimination when it comes to music.
I think that's beautiful, man. I just think that is
out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I just wonder where that, if you could talk to cats about, I mean, it does tie you up creatively because you're worried about if, in essence, if you're trying to commercialize the music or monetize it, people are going to say, well, Jerry, we don't know where this falls into. I hear that over and over again from artists. You know, they say, well, the company said we didn't know where this goes. Like, that should even matter, but it does. You know, is that why it ties you up? Because you're thinking about, you know, it's not about the creative part of it. It's about where is this thing going to fit in and slot into our, you know, branding obsessed society musically?
I'm not really worried about that. so much because I feel like they're, with pop, more popular music, or, but when I say that, I mean like not jazz or not classical
right,
music,
right,
but,
right.
things that like there's more like production, like studio production. For me, the thing that ties me up is more like, well, the commitment it takes to be an expert at any one particular genre. Like if you're going to be a jazz musician, I say move to New York and immerse yourself in jazz culture. Try to get in touch with like the roots of it.
Yeah.
For classical music, if you wanted to write symphonic music, like the level of commitment to doing that is like just it's so enormous. Then I feel like if I were to go in that direction, then everything else would, it's just confusing. It's my one Achilles heel is, and then I make a living as a musician, so usually I'm getting hired to play all different kinds of stuff. But I don't consider myself like a jazz musician in the sense of like, when I see guys in this town that have, and gals, not just guys, but
yeah, sure.
There's a lot of like great musicians that are, have like a certain acumen to play like jazz in particular. That's just a crazy road.
Well, Borge, I just want to say, like, this is my concept of and definition. I think that if we walked around Los Angeles and asked people what their concept of jazz is, we'd get 20 different definitions. And so it's like, my feeling about jazz is, I guess it's the American songbook, but more it's about basically playing the head of the tune and then leaving the head of the tune, and a lot of tension and release, a lot of pulse, a lot of dynamics, and most importantly, urgency and fearlessness, as if you're playing as if your life depended on it. It's not running through standards and playing them perfectly, or sight reading a bunch of Charlie Parker, solos and memorizing them. You can do that, but that's not jazz. I just, to me, jazz is more of a feeling than it is a description. I just wonder and those cats that are walking around, they have a certain acumen. I mean, how much is that? Can you talk about in the academy, whatever academy you went to through high school or music school, what is something tangible that you learned in the academy that you can take on the bandstand with Jonathan Wilson or Ziggy or Dan Horn? What is one thing from the academy that you can bring on the bandstand consistently? Because I don't want to bash the academy, but I will say, like, going to New York today, you can't find the culture of jazz. Everything's been gentrified,
Yeah, I mean, well, I would, just getting to that, I would think of, if I were to move to New York and do that thing, which is something I have fantasized about many times.
Oh boy!
But now my life is here in LA, and I love it, and I love the community here, and I just would want to, in normal times.
And dude, let me tell you, it's the hip place, yeah, going. Totally.
But as far getting to your question, though, I would say learning songs and learning form. Learning scales. These are the things that, from way back when that they sound simple enough. But because when it comes to improvisation, my favorite improvisers, some of them being Wayne Shorter, John Schofield, these guys don't sound like they are playing like things that they practice.
Exactly, dude.
They sound like they're, they're drawing from things that they practice, but I never hear that, oh, wow, it sounds like they pulled that thing off that they were working on. It always sounds like they're taking their instrument and singing with it, and singing freely with it, and not repeating ideas, and not playing things that they've played before. So that's a very rare jazz musician. That, of course, like Miles, same kind of thing, where you don't hear the practice room. You hear that dangerous quality that I think you're kind of referring to.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's it's hard to find those kinds of musicians anywhere. Like, I think, like, when you find them, if you're a jazz fan, you tend to know their name.
I mean, do you feel like the Academy gave you the rudiments that then you can, so that you're not practicing what you know? That ultimate, because I mean, if you're listening to Wayne Shorter or Sonny Rollins practice, they're not practicing what they know. They're practicing what they don't know. And then they get up on the bandstand and then they're able to, sort of extemporaneously riff off of that. I mean, would you say that, I don't know, did you find yourself, like, where did you go to school for music, and ultimately was the most meaningful stuff just collaborating with the other cats that went there?
Well, I went to Performing Arts High School in Houston. That was like my first.
Wow.
Well, I mean, even I had a vocal background in middle school, and then for 2 years I went to my regular high school, which I was zoned to because my parents, very interesting, but they were kind of afraid that if I went to Performing Arts High School that I'd turn out to be like a drug addict or something. So I had to really beg them to go to Performing Arts High School. I went to my audition, and the jazz band director there was like, "Why didn't you do this 2 years ago?"
Right.
And I was, I felt the same way. So anyway, that kind of got me on the path. And then I went to University of Miami in Miami, Florida for 2 years. And then I transferred to Florida International University, where I finished school, which happened to be a really good move for me because I met a piano teacher who was a classical, like, I had to take classical lessons. And that really was, oddly enough, equally, if not more important than the jazz education that I had. Because I really think if you're young and you have an interest in jazz, I think classical music is, as a pianist, is like so important.
Interesting.
To like
Interesting.
Have like the technical background, where that doesn't if you've like worked out things playing classical music, I think the technical aspects of playing any kind of music, if you have the ears, there's a lot of classical musicians that somehow don't have those kind of ears where they can break away from the page.
Exactly.
But if you do have that technical ability, then it makes playing any kind of music, that factor is not something that you're trying to overcome.
Can you talk about,
I needed that.
I mean, how did you learn? Can you talk about how you learned to break away from the page? Is there a specific memory you can talk about? Because I think every musician that I get off on at a certain point crossed over the Rubicon of no longer playing in fear. Is there a kind of an example you can talk about when you stopped playing in fear and were able to throw the book away?
Well, I after this education and then moving here to LA, at that point, I think I was like I was more into like rock and pop and arranging and production, and kind of got away from like improvised music. I lived in San Francisco for 5 years before I moved to LA in my late 20s and early 30s. And I was in a band, and in this band there was no blowing at all. It was all about, songwriting, and we had like the major label aspirations and all that stuff. And it never really panned out. But then when I moved here to LA, which is where I am right now, I spent about 5 years working on records with different people, but it was mostly like studio work, not a lot of improvisation. And it wasn't, and then around the same time in 2011, 2012, two things happened. I started playing with Jonathan Wilson, and then I had this other band here in LA called the Gimme Fives, which was a kind of like a throwback to Memphis soul, like Booker T.
Yeah, like MG stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And so those two things were going on simultaneously, and it kind of gave me the opportunity to like blow, but both of them in like settings that I felt more like were authentic to me, and not so much, like I'm going to be a straight ahead, bebop player. but
I love it, dude. I love it.
But I could marry the two things that I loved, which is
there
a song.
Yeah. I mean, is there a way to talk about how to marry that? I mean, to me, this is what every musician needs to, whether they can do it or not is a different story. But this is what is essential to spiritual music, is merging the formula or the form with then improvisation, and not playing like, breakneck tempos just to show off your technique or chops, but eventually just like going where you don't know where to go. That to me is that's what it's about,
Well, I don't know if I have like the words to
exactly
explain how that happens. For some reason, that my approach to improvisation has never been take the thing that I was practicing and do it live. Like I've always tried to just follow a thread. I had a great teacher. I have tons of great teachers throughout, my education, but one in particular was this guy named Jeff Leibson. When I was at the University of Miami, he was my first piano teacher, and this guy was like, had the stuff of concert pianist. In fact, his dad was a concert pianist, and so he had that already as a youngster. And but he was also a great jazz improviser, and he imparted this idea of like taking short phrases and building on those phrases and turning those things into improvisational compositions. At the time, I was listening to a lot of Keith Jarrett, because that was what you do when you're in college. And,
I dig, man. I dig, yeah.
And I would hear how Keith would take like a little seed of an idea, and every improvisation, say, because Keith had the great Standards Trio, which unfortunately we'll never hear live again for a couple of reasons, because Gary Peacock.
Gary, rest in peace, man. Rest in peace.
Yes, and then of course Keith isn't playing anymore. So, but getting back to that, improvisation has always, that from that idea that Jeff Leibson gave me was like start small and build compositionally on that idea, as opposed to playing the fastest riffs you ever learned in the practice room. So that's kind of been my approach, when I'm playing with these groups. when I play in the reggae band, I have like one opportunity or two opportunities to play some solos a night, but it's not like,
It's
you
yeah,
know,
no, it's not. Yeah, it's
that's
not.
more
Yeah,
groove oriented. That's
sure.
all. That music is all about the pocket and locking with the 9 other people on stage. Which is that was another
Well,
education
so
and continues to be.
talking to Jerry Borge here on the Jake Feinberg Show, just one of the most articulate cats I've ever come across. It's really an honor. I wanted you. So again, going back to the Dead at the Fillmore West, Jarrett would be playing Vox organ. Chick Corea would be playing piano. You'd have Ayrto, Miles, Wayne. I'm not sure who the rhythm section was at the time, but the point is that you're talking about these little.
Might have been Jack DeJohnette on drum.
Probably, yeah. It could have been Tony and Ron. I'm not sure exactly, but the thing is that they it's these short phrases that you build off of, but then what I want you to talk about is incorporating the magical part of it, because it's not like you're doing solo piano concerts all the time. It's listening to what everybody else is doing and then going with something. Either people are following you or you're following them, but the point is you're not just like wanking it on your own and you're up there, look at me, look at me, look at me. So it is about improvisation, but then there's a listening component. Where do you feel like your ears grew the most on the bandstand? Was it in San Francisco? Was it when you became a leader of your group? I mean, to me, when everybody's listening actively and bouncing off of each other, it could be any kind of music, but that's where magic occurs. I'm not so into I don't want to see the same show every night, and if things get too predictable, I mean, for a fan, it's boring. I can't imagine what it must be like for the musician, although I know it's good to get paid. I just wonder where your ears grew the most on the bandstand.
Well, I mean, that all started in high school. When I mentioned earlier that I went to performing arts high school my junior and senior year. My freshman and sophomore year, to get me out of the house, my parents enrolled me in this thing called the Summer Jazz Workshop, which happened to be this afternoon jazz camp for young high school kids in Houston.
Wow.
and the top Houston musicians that were playing in the clubs were the teachers during the day. They had a nice little daytime gig that they had fun with, and I was always drawn to like the ensemble sound, and I've often felt like I wasn't cut out to be like a great jazz improviser. I was more into like the sound of the band. This has been a real frustrating thing for me, like during this 8, 9, 10 months that we've been not able to play music with people. I've never been drawn to being sitting down and playing solo piano concerts. In fact, I kind of don't really enjoy doing that. I'd much rather play with some friends and new friends where there's some interaction and camaraderie and creating an overall, gumbo.
Yeah,
sound,
it's a vibe. Vibe, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I guess it started in high school, and played in bands in college, curricularly, extracurricularly, and I've always been drawn to the ensemble. I've had gigs where I've done horn arrangements for different things, and I'd like to sit down and just like work out wicked harmonies with horns. And so it's I guess that's where my when I'm improvising, it's just never been about like check out what I've been working on. It's more like just an extension of getting the groove going with whoever I have the pleasure of doing that with.
Yeah, well, when I've seen you play, I mean, to me, you are the ultimate team player in a band. I don't see you stretch. I see it actually in my mind. I think you subscribe to the philosophy to a degree of less is more. I mean, say what you need to say and move on. I mean, that's just in Grateful Shred settings. But then I've seen you go off, and so you have the ability to stretch out. But I do you feel how? For me, it's been very hard. I've had a lot of dis-ease because I haven't been able to get healed by spiritual communal music. Just from your own point of view, can you talk about, as honestly as you can, the psycho-spiritual effects of not being able to make love on the bandstand for a year?
It's funny, or not funny, but the week that things looked like they were going to start to lock down,
right,
which was the second going in the third week of March, I was on a plane to New York to play a gig with Jonathan Wilson. We were going to play at a Brooklyn Bowl, and Jonathan had a new record come out. He put this new band together, mostly Nashville cats.
Interesting.
And the record is called Dixie Blur. It's a beautiful record, and I didn't work on it. In fact, I hadn't really played with him besides that Neil Casal tribute, back in, what was that?
That was, so you actually didn't, you had, because I saw you at that. That's what, you were on fire, but you'd never played with him before.
Man. Oh no, I'd played and toured with Jonathan from 2011, like October of 2011 till the summer of 2014, and then Jonathan started playing with Roger Waters, and kind of did his, he was on a different trip, and then put out a different record, and,
right.
Worked with a bunch of amazing players, and just that happens. But so this was kind of a, for me and him, I suppose a bit of a reunion.
Yeah, reunion. Thank you. So it had been a little while. That's what I did.
Yeah. So we flew to New York, and on the 11th, and I arrived at the hotel and ran into Jonathan, both checking in at the same time, and he's like, "Dude, gig's off.
Wow.
Gonna fly you back tomorrow." And at that point, he had made the call like pretty much like hours before the call would have been made for him and everybody. It was that, like, okay, now everybody, all the venues are saying we can't have more than 50 people or whatever in a venue. So he was like, I can't be I don't want to feel responsible for this unknown thing that's going on. And of course I understood. In fact, it wasn't the first gig that had been taken off the calendar. I was going to play in Australia with Ziggy Marley a week before that, and then that festival, that there were two festivals, and the decision was made that we weren't going to go to Australia, which opened up the opportunity to play with Jonathan, which we did a couple of gigs. Then we did a couple of gigs at Hollywood Forever the week before,
right?
And then that led to, well, let's do some show. He had these shows booked, but not a keyboard player, and the shows at Hollywood Forever went well, and they were like, okay, you want to come to New York? So anyway, that's kind of a disorganized way of saying, like, those gigs were yanked, and then all of a sudden it was like, I've had a couple of gigs during COVID, and they've all all except one have been with Ziggy Marley, and they've all been taped things. We did one drive-in show.
Yeah, I saw some footage of like you at like some like outdoor venue. It looked like a supermarket parking lot or so. I couldn't tell where you were.
That's interesting. It was in the parking lot of Angels Stadium in Anaheim.
So that was the drive-in one.
Yes, that was in late October.
Yeah,
and that was an absolute gas thrill to be able to get up there and even though you're wearing a mask or like that
it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
a requirement.
Yeah,
it's a little weird and uncomfortable, but still it was it was definitely quite the release to get to do it.
How do you, what is, like, first of all, you claim you have disorganized answers. You have some of the best answers to some of my questions, because some of them are not even questions. But the thing is that, how worried, I don't know if that's the right word, but I am just, Borge, I am mystified by, I understand that people are getting excited about a vaccine. Of course, we have a huge part of the country that doesn't even believe in vaccines. Or
COVID.
Or COVID for the... No, but dude, you know why you moved to LA is because it gets a little blissed out, but the community of authentic creatives, that is just a love fest. And I'm just like, how are these urban centers especially supposed to build back a community where people can know that they can come and really get off on the music? I don't come to socialize at these things. I come to heal. And if I can't get near Borge, listen, I'll wear a mask. But if you can't even dance, this to me is I'm talking more about indoor venues and the drive-through thing. That's fine. But have you had, how do you stay in the moment right now? And how do you stay grounded? Because for the audience, Jerry Borge probably would have played since March when everything got shut down. You probably would have already played a couple of hundred sets of music since then. That's insane. That's like taking the microphone. That's like taking my microphone away, and I've had it during COVID. I don't know what I would do without it. Just take me through how you stay grounded.
Well, I don't know that I am grounded right now.
That's fine too. You can. I just want you to, because I know people put on a strong face. Musicians especially, you don't know what they're really going through. And it's okay to fall apart. It's okay not to feel inspired. But, dude, if my craft and my yoga was taken away from me, I'd be a fucking mess.
Well, I've tried in every way to accentuate the positive during this time.
Sure.
I spent a lot of time with my girlfriend. We were very lucky before, about 4 or 5 months before this whole lockdown, we found a house which has like a nice backyard area. And so it's a couple bedrooms. So we have like our space, and, I have one of the rooms is a studio. I bought an electric guitar. I bought a Stratocaster actually.
Nice, dude.
Early on, and I like to write music on guitar, and I took a guitar lesson, but I also I have every summer for the past 15 summers gone on some kind of tour, so I kind of feel like it's been an important break for my body a little bit to
right.
not be so worried about keeping my chops up. I listen to music all the time, and I have perfect pitch. I was born with perfect pitch. I sometimes have to test myself to be like, God, do you still have it? And I'll listen to something, and then I'll go to the piano, and like I'll hit the chord that I'm hearing. I'm like, yes,
man,
okay. I still that hasn't escaped, thank God. But you know, I'm just thinking of this as like a, you know, I'm trying to look at it as a welcome break. I'm writing music. I have a disc drive of about 40 or 50 songs that I'll go to, that I'm kind of like pecking away at, with no pressure, you know, no pressure that I have to like make because I don't have a record. You know, I've released a couple of songs, you know, where I'm singing, actually, because that is also another interest.
Wow.
Whether it's a commercial interest or like genuine, because I also have a love of words. And so, you know, I'm just trying not to get too down. I watch a lot of CNN and read a lot of news, and look at this time as more of like a, you know, just a weird aberration in history.
It's historic. It's definitely a historic time. I mean, I try to talk to my daughters about the fact, I mean, everybody is, part of it's also the time we live in. I mean, people are more distracted than ever before. People got caught up with a lot of their livelihood in terms of moving faster and faster and faster. And I mean, how much do you just, I mean, even though, you know, you were born in Houston, or you grew up there,
Born
in Houston. Great. I mean, by the way, I don't know. Do you know the lineage of all the jazz crusaders? Joe Sample, Wilton Felder, they all grew up in the wards in Houston. I mean,
yeah.
Hubert Laws, all those cats.
Yeah.
You know,
it's an awesome, like, great, like the jazz and soul, jazz and blues, like that. It's a, you know, it was a really, I think, a pretty great place to grow up for music. And, you know, it was all like very inspiring, you know, and through my high school, like we were, you know, like we had Kirk Whalum would come to our high school and give like a master class. And we also had some like even heavier hitters that come, you know, for spring jazz concert, Bob Mintzer and Randy Brecker and Ileana Elias. And, you know, so,
Michael Carvin.
Anyway.
No, the question I have is, stepping back from, like, unplugging from the deluge of information that we get on a consistent basis, recognizing that our planet is on fire, the Amazon is on fire. You know, this coronavirus, it does impact people's ability to breathe. It's their lungs. How much of this is just and I hate to sound callous, but how much do you just try to get back to Grandmother Earth and realize that Mother Nature, Grandmother Earth, is crying out for help, and that this is kind of, unfortunately, a cleansing process? Is there any credence in your mind of that?
Well, like here in the U.S., I mean, it seems to be like a, you know, I mean, if it is this cleansing process,
that might be the wrong word. That might be the wrong. I'm just saying, it's
no,
like, yeah.
It's I think it's the right word, and it's like the wrong, you know, the wrong way of going about the cleansing process. It actually is, you know, it is cleansing.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's coming at the expense of lives and
exactly.
And you know, I mean, you know, we're looking at, in my opinion, like, and certainly not to get too political, but we're looking at a time where, you know, in a month and change, I think some real positive things are going to start happening. And so, like, this past 4 years, you know, like it is boggling to me that like we've had to endure like 4 years of this presidency. And,
Yeah.
you know, so there is that cleansing process that we're going through. One thing I wanted to throw in there,
Do it, man. Do it.
Is you know, just talking about like getting, for me, going through this time of like not being able to play with people. Although, you know, I've done a few sessions in masks, you know, like, and you know, I played a gig with a friend of mine who's a young guitar player named Taylor Kropp. He asked me to do a gig a couple weeks ago that was just like his music and some like country music, and it was an outdoor thing, and it was a lot of fun. But the thing I miss the most is going out to, just like you were saying, like your healing process, and
Exactly.
and your you know, my religion being music, and being able to go out 3-4 nights a week and see, you know, constantly get inspired.
I love it.
You know,
it's huge loss.
Slash,
God.
slash depressed by seeing like great, you know, how great these players are in this town. You know, like,
well, yeah.
I've been finding, you know, trying to find like the live streams of the things that will inspire me. Early on, there was a John Scofield trio with Steve Swallow and Bill Stewart performance at the Blue Note in New York, and that was a live stream, and that was like, I mean, that was magic for me on a Friday night.
I love Swallow, dude. I love Swallow.
Yeah, that last record that they put out of like Swallow tunes is just, you know, it's insane. And, you know. So yeah, I'm, you know, I'll come across some things that there's an LA Philharmonic
Sure.
put together a series called Sound Stage, where there are, I think, 9 or 10 concerts live from the Hollywood Bowl stage with no audience, and so, you know, still trying to get inspired, you know, through all of this.
Well, Borge, do you think that we could? There's just so much more to get to, and I'm backed up against another interview. Can we finish this set later this week? There's a lot more to get to.
Absolutely, man. I'd love to.
No, this is fantastic. You are the man. You're one of the cats, and you know, if you go out and see a band and they're inspiring, you want to go home and feel like crying your cereal or whatever. That's fine. Don't ever get discouraged by freaking wankers. You know, it's about the collective, man. You got the memo. You're blessed. You're on the righteous path, and you're one of the cats. And you know, when we come out on the other side, I just hope that a lot of the beautiful people that I've gotten to know, my peer group especially, that they still want to do this for a living. It's really hard, but we have a lot more to dive into. So, dude, thank you for putting up with the technical issues, and I'll get with you, and we'll find the time to finish this up.
That sounds great, man. I'm around.
Yeah, but dude, don't spill any more coffee beans, all right?
Oh, but no, that's the start of a good week.
All right, Groove. Be good, man.
All right, man. You as well.
Be cool, brother.
Thanks for chatting.
Always, dude. Later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Peace. Great hang with Jerry Borge. It's been a long time coming. We'll be back with George Walker right after. Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today, wherever you are in this wacky galaxy. And what an honor it is to bring back a cat who just went through my questions like a hot knife on butter. He was cogent and clear, and the only thing that was missing was just not enough time. So I felt like it was appropriate to bring him back for set 2. Jerry Borge, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Thanks for having me again.
It's an honor, brother. You know, one of the L's on my show is leadership, and I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit, being that you've been a band leader and worked as a sideman for a lot of cats. What are the most important qualities of leadership on the bandstand, and who's the best leader that you've ever worked for?
Well, part one of that question, I really feel like one of the great qualities of a leader is someone that in the musical setting, someone that hires you and gives you the confidence to do your thing, because they're letting you know by you being on stage with them or in the studio with them that the reason that they hired you is because of what you are going to contribute, and to kind of put the reins on micromanaging, and I believe that really allows for freedom and trust, because whenever I find myself in a new situation, there's always some insecurities, and you want to make sure that you're doing what you were hired to do. So I think that's the main thing, that that sort of freedom. And I've been in situations where I felt like I was given that, and I also have been on the other side of feeling like I was just there, and I was being
right. No, it's
micromanaged,
just it
not.
never works. I mean, why is it so hard this is just your opinion. Why? I know it sounds simplistic, but I mean, Dave Holland, when I interviewed him, he said that Train used to go up to Miles and be like, "What do you want me to play? What do you want me to play?" And Miles kept turning his back on him, and then it finally dawned on Train that Miles brought him in to be himself. Like, he brought him in for him, for what he was going to bring to the equation. Why do you see, in your mind, as a musician, somebody who has a deep well of respect for all music, you're not somebody who's like petrified of the bandstand, you've figured your own way. Why is the micromanaging so prevalent? It's probably been this way the whole time, but I also look at like Gen Xers and younger, seeming to be more insecure. Anyway, the old masters of music, that's why they brought people into their band. Obviously, they would light a fire under them once in a while if need be, but they ultimately wanted them to bring their singular gifts to the bandstand. Why do you think micromanaging why does that get in the way so more often than not?
Well, I think it depends on the setting. If it's say you're working with a band or an artist that spent a lot of time making an album, and they get married to whatever if they had like a lot of involvement in their record, and say not just played one instrument, but because there's a lot of really talented people out there now that are able to do wear a lot of hats, and so I think that's where I've run into that feeling of, wow, I'm just here to kind of mimic whatever that person created, and not that I don't think that whatever they did is beautiful, but
right, no, I did.
But there's that feeling of like, well, I could this could be done by any number of people,
right,
and,
exactly, yeah.
So I think that's now, I haven't been in a ton of like, we were talking on Monday about jazz and that kind of interaction between musicians. So it's been a minute since I've been in that kind of situation. But I think that's mainly it. like you might run into a situation where whatever you're doing is not particularly what the leader wants or intends to happen. So, I mean,
Yeah, it's perfect. I
that's the
mean, I
best
guess
answer I have.
maybe to the point, like, I mean, do you feel sometimes that you say that there's a lot of super talented people who can wear a lot of different hats? I mean, it's kind of that's to me the calamity of modern music is that musicians can really not, because they have to wear so many hats. Um, there's no apparatus around them. The focus is, uh, I don't know. I remember just Garcia, someone asking Garcia, why don't you keep playing, banjo? Do you still practice banjo or something? And Jerry was like, well, I got to a point where I was like, I had all these different string instruments, and I realized that, I could be really amazing at one or really mediocre at a bunch. And I just wonder if you, in your own mind, if you could talk a little bit about your own leadership style. And, to me, there are cats that might be able to wear different hats, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they know that they should be doing that kind of stuff. I mean, are you somebody that goes in and tries to delegate and I guess more to the point, like, how would you describe your leadership style?
Well, over the last few years, I've done a couple of gigs where I've fronted a band, like singing material that I've written, and sometimes I would be able to hire for those gigs some people that I'd recorded with or recorded some of my own material with, and I think everybody in this town is so busy that to expect somebody that I hire for a local gig to like really take great notes and listen to the material that I present them that we want to do live. I've always tended to hire people, just like I was saying before, that I trust their musicianship.
Yeah.
And even if they didn't necessarily have the time to really dig in, we might have you might have one or two rehearsals max.
Max.
Yeah, just because the budgets and people's time. It's sometimes you just gotta throw caution to the wind, and as long as the people that you're playing with know the song, at least they might not play the exact parts that were on the record, but they might add something that needs to be there that wasn't there in the first place. So I've tended not to be really picky when it comes to telling the guys that I'm playing with, guys and gals that I've been playing with, just let them offer, since they, more often than not, they're not doing it for, a lot of money. They're just doing it because, they want to work with me, and we don't have that many opportunities to do it. So I think that's what I try to, I just want people to feel good and have a good time, and not feel like they're being scrutinized. That's just when music is not, to me, it's not fun anymore, when the scrutiny is overshadowing the musicality. And so it just so often, music is, I've once, I don't know if I coined the phrase, but I feel like in LA,
Yeah.
I say music is a contact sport.
But explain to the worldwide audience what that means.
Well, I think that if you're going into the music business feeling, like it's going to be like a real feel good sort of, profession.
Yeah, you're in for a rude awakening.
Until you find your people. And
Exactly.
and when you find your people, then that's a amazing, very freeing sort of feeling, and it kind of touches on what we were talking about on Monday. I mentioned to you that like sometimes I'll go to a club and see some unbelievable young cats playing, and it just makes me, not want to quit, but not want to pursue what they're doing per se,
Sure.
like instrumental music. So I'm kind of bouncing.
All right, no, Borge. Let's just get down to brass tacks. Because I think it's so important. I mean, I've seen you a couple times, obviously with the guys from Shred. The interesting thing about those cats is that they all kind of have their own projects going on. They're not like really like steeped in like, they haven't been like a jam band all through their lives. They have many different things. But, can you just talk about the process? I think it's interesting, like when you got to LA, how did you find your people?
Well, it's a crazy thing. I told you that I lived in San Francisco before I moved to LA.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that. Right, go ahead, continue.
And I was there for 5 years, and when I moved there, I didn't really think. I knew I wanted music to be a part of what I was doing there, but I didn't. I wasn't intent on being a professional musician. I had just graduated from college, spent a couple years in Miami after I graduated, just doing gigs here and there, and so I moved to San Francisco because some friends had recommended that they thought that I would dig it, and a friend of mine had a room in his apartment available, so it was time for me to move. Then over time, actually it was just like 6 months into living there, I saw a flyer at a coffee shop back in the day, like this is 1997. So
yeah, dig.
There were still local rags that had like, in the back, musicians seeking musicians section.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And so anyway, I saw this ad, and it was really like a, eye-opening ad, because it was like, band seeking keyboard player. We have Hammond B3, Wurlitzer 200, a Fender Rhodes, clavinet, and I was like, wow, it sounds like
that's a buffet for you, man.
At the time, I was 27 years old, and I hadn't really even like sat at a B3, it was. So this band, which was called High Water Rising, which was a rock band that ended up turning into being like a studio project more than like a live thing. But the reason I bring that band up is I can kind of point to it, and it, even though 20 years later, now living in LA, I can still kind of point to almost everything I do now started with that band, and including the first session that I ever did when I moved to LA, which was in 2003, it was like the end of 2003, beginning of 2004. So, trying to remember like the.
Well, so let's talk about the specific. What are the S? I mean, nobody remembers what was said per se, but you remember how you felt. I mean, what are some of the essence or the things that carried over to this day? Just maybe give an example or two.
You mean with?
Well, you said everything like you said everything I carry over. It's carried over. Everything I did or learned, or was ensconced with that band is stuff I still utilized today. And I want to know,
Okay,
like,
well,
yeah.
yeah. Here's very specifically the singer of that band. He was the owner of all these instruments, and he was, like he came from Northern California, Mill Valley, and usually kids that grow up in Mill Valley are, they're kind of privileged kids
Absolutely,
for the
yeah,
most part.
absolutely.
And, or at least, quite a few of them. So, but he's a very musical guy, great songwriter, really great singer, and he was really young when we met too. He was just 21, so he was like 6 years younger than me, and he was in this car accident, and he got a settlement, and he bought all these instruments because he was obsessed with Bob Marley. And he was like, I want to have like all those keyboards that are on those Bob Marley records. So I, spent a lot of time with him in my late 20s listening to Bob Marley records. And, that at least paid off some 20 years later.
Right, exactly.
Where
Wow.
where I had the opportunity to audition for Ziggy Marley, and now I've been playing with Ziggy Marley for about 4 years, and so that's like directly, I could see that link. I also got familiar with all those instruments at that time, and which was great. I don't think I even knew how to turn on a B3 like when I went to that room the first time. So that was great, just getting familiar with like the way all those instruments work in not just a reggae setting, but in all those instruments are also very much a part of the Dead, and so.
Well, I wanted to ask you about. I mean, like you mentioned you had there was the biggest kind of stretched out situation was that you were in that sort of MG's Memphis Stax kind of band where you were playing a lot of that kind of groove. Al Jackson,
the Gimme Fives.
The Gimme Fives. Now, a lot. There's a huge misconception because like most cats play the B3 and they're playing left hand bass, and I'm like, I'm thinking Borge was probably kicking pedals. I mean, that's like McDuff and Groove Holmes, Jimmy Smith. There are only a few guys, Chester Thompson from Tower of Power, that could play bass lines with their feet. I mean, is that something that maybe you don't do it all the time, but I mean, is that something that you're able to do, is kick pedals?
Well, quite honestly, like I've never really been in a situation where I've kicked pedals and like been soloing with my right hand and comping with the left hand.
Dig, yeah.
I never did that Jimmy Smith thing of like renting a warehouse and just, get in there for a couple years every day. And I feel like, yeah, it's probably something I could do. I could do it like slowly. I could probably get through some ballads, but
yeah, well, it's just weird because like I'm telling you, man, there's a couple of records I'm going to hip you to if you're not hip to them, because there's one by Chester Thompson on Black Jazz called Powerhouse, and it's B3, tenor, trombone, drums, and the bass lines. I just think that I realize it's not, like you said, you have to work on it for a long time, but there's something about the bass lines or the notes are just very different than an electric bass or even an upright bass. There's like there's a different tonality to them, and it's just funkier. To me, it's like if you had a budget and you were leading a band, like in your mind's eye, what would be the instrumentation? Would it be, how many songs if you played 2 sets a night? I mean, what would be the ideal? I mean, to me, if I could play music, I'd have like vibes, all sorts of ethnic percussion, maybe a trap set, probably a B3, a couple of horns. But I just wonder, like, throwing. I totally know what you're saying. Where you got cats coming in on the fly, they're busy, quote unquote. Everyone's moving at a faster rate than they have to, but everyone's on the move. Time is of the essence. But if you had the opportunity to put a band together that you knew was going to be going on the road, playing live, in terms of song formation, would it be just songs? Would you what would be the Borge dream band?
I think, first, I'd have to consider like my own setup, what the dream setup would be, and that would of course like involve like a B3 or some kind of organ, and M3 would be fine, as long as you had a Leslie up there, and then piano and some kind of cool synth. But as far as everybody else, I mean, it would be pretty traditional. It would be as far as like a rock and soul setting of mainly electric instruments and perhaps a 3-piece horn section. It would all depend, though. I've been kind of working on just a big batch of songs that are probably going to be like with vocals more than like an instrumental thing. So there's going to be string, I arrange for strings as well, so that would be a part of it, but I don't know if I'd want to like try to pull that off live.
Dude, that would be the heaviest thing of all. If you put that'd be like Marvin Gaye at the Oakland Auditorium '74 trying to pull that off.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. I've had the opportunity live, like here in town, like on a couple of occasions to put a band together and have a string quartet on stage with the band, and done some somewhat ambitious things for club shows. So
can you talk about one? I would love to. I just want to get inside your give me an example. Tell me about one of those times, regardless of it. If it go ahead.
There's a club here. It used to be called Spaceland, and then it became the Satellite, and it's right down the street from me in Silver Lake.
Wow.
And they became a casualty of COVID, and there's a lot of people here that are really sad about it.
That is really, thank you for, thank you for, I mean, it's terrible that sucks, but I know there's a lot of casualties, and I want to make sure that we pay homage to these places that were so vital. So thank you for bringing, I know it sucks, and it's happening all over the country, so continue.
Yeah, it's going to be quite an adjustment, once we're on the other side of this, and that's maybe another conversation as far as like how it's affecting all business.
No, this is only set 2, man. This is only set 2.
Yeah. The Satellite. The Satellite used to have a booker that she was putting together tribute nights, and I was involved in quite a few of those tribute nights. One of them was a Lou Reed tribute night, and so I did a couple of songs on that tribute night and had a band together, bass, drums, guitar, keys, and a string quartet, and we did Perfect Day, and I went to the record and I transcribed the string arrangement, which was written by, I believe it was written by Mick Ronson, because he was like heavily involved like in the production, and could do all that stuff, so I somewhere there's a videotape of me singing Perfect Day with a band.
Oh, wait, hold on, wait. You're not going to get away with that. It's a VHS stashed away, or is it online? We got to find this.
I don't know. Maybe,
okay.
or maybe there's I should say an iPhone video of it. I haven't seen it, but that was like, one of the crazy things that, I would do. I'd spend hours putting a string arrangement together for like a free thing, because just to keep that spirit alive, and also like it's just not happening all that often.
I think you're 100% right. I mean, the ability to incorporate traditional symphonic instruments into a Americana, funk, rock, whatever setting, that is completely not that's very rare. So I think but it's like you said, tell me a little bit about this synth. You said I'd like to have a nice synth on stage. Explain, because like I am obsessed with I interviewed Rick Laird, who was the original bass player in Mahavishnu, and he talked about the early mini Moogs, and Jan Hammer was able to sample one of the early ones. Like those early 70 Moogs, the Moog synth was amazing, but then the synthesizer by the late 70s became, to me, kind of, it's kind of a dirty word, because it really took a lot of took a lot of jobs away from people, because you could start sampling all these instruments on a synthesizer. So what's your go-to? I mean, what do you think about the early 70 Moog? Like what in your mind is a good synth?
Well, okay. Well, just to complete that thought about sampling and people losing jobs,
Please.
You could say that about drum machines too, of course.
It's insane. Dude, Harvey Mason, Harvey Mason was creating his own Linn drum sound and getting paid for it. And then they'd have a microchip, and it was so depressing in the early, I don't know, to me it's like it was the beginning of the end of the humanity in music. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I love a lot of music from the 80s, and I grew up during that time.
Sure.
So I don't frown on, quite a bit of like new wave music, like when it comes to like Depeche Mode. I mean, their use of synths is, like that's an integral part of their artistry. And, that might it might be a surprise that, like, to hear that someone who's, plays in a Grateful Dead cover band, also appreciates Tears for Fears.
No, dude, let me tell you something right now. Dude, it is totally awesome. To me, I'm looking at it just from the perspective of when this is truly in like 76, Mike Clark, the drummer from the Headhunters, was like, the producer on the album was like, don't play yourself, just play straight beats. They wanted to start comping a sound from the hit record. And so for me, it was like, what happened to individuality? What happened to playing yourself? Like it became so I'm looking at it from the humanity perspective. The new wave music. I mean, I was an 80s cat too. I didn't know what I was listening to. I was getting off on it, but just now to know that like that was really the death. I mean, to me it was like the bean counters started to get involved with the music itself. So in any event, that doesn't mean that great music wasn't made. And honestly, Aaron Spursky told me when I interviewed him that, and this is like not really documented, but there were like, Black Flag went up and jammed at the Grateful Dead's house. I mean, it's not. I mean, there was punk rock. It takes on all different forms. So
Sure, that's awesome. I love hearing that,
dude. It's so cool. I mean, dude, those guys were, again, it's not really my pocket, but the late 70s punk music, very different than what it turned into, but they started to eat acid. And then next thing you know, where could you get good acid? You could get it in the Dead parking lots, but then they got sucked into the music and they became they were up at Mickey Hart's barn playing with the Dead. So, the Dead, sometimes it's just like too much, you listen to too much Grateful Dead, and you're playing in a Dead cover band. I'm not sure if it's really good, very healthy for you,
Right. Yeah. And to be honest, like the Dead, that whole thing, I think for a long time when I was younger, I wasn't even really open to it because I didn't really dig the all the culture attached to it.
Exactly, dude.
Like,
exactly, bro. Yeah, exactly, dude.
And when you like look at like Bob Weir in like tennis shorts and polo shirts,
the pink shirt and the cut off jean shorts, it's like, what is going on?
Well, I dig it because it's not trying
right.
to be like what the stereotype. In fact, it's not at all that. And that's really what that's how I started to actually really start listening and not really be concerned with that culture. That tie-dye patchouli culture.
Dude, well, yeah. I mean, let's just face it. Jerry Borge is not a hippie,
Yeah, I mean, at heart, there are.
Yeah, you're a beautiful cat. There are so many. I mean, dude, there are so many cats today, including yourself, that are playing the Dead's music that just were like, it was an anathema to them. Like, they would not play Fire on the Mountain at high school parties. They wouldn't do it. They didn't dig it. They did, and it's for the same exact reason. It was like, it was some kind of cult following, and the vibe and all the multi-sensory components to it were not syncing up. I can't blame people. I think that's spot on. I never, I mean, to me, it's all just sort of, when I see you guys play, especially Borge's, in the keyboard seat, I mean, I'm getting off as much on the musicians than the music itself. You know what I'm saying? It's not, to me, it's like, that's the magic of it all. It's like the personalities and the characters of it. I mean, you talk about Weir. I mean, all those guys in the band, they were pretty, Jerry especially, they all were, I mean, Jerry was mystified as to why they had such a big following. He never understood it, They never took themselves that seriously. That's what makes them endearing. And when I see people like you guys on stage, I can tell you take what you do very seriously, but you don't take yourself that seriously. And that is the musician that I gravitate to.
Well, that's and just talking about Grateful Shred, like, I mean, that, we were talking about like live music and that on Monday, when I think about bands that I miss playing with, I mean, that's very, very much at the top, as far as that camaraderie and lack of, no ego. No one's going in saying, I know this tune better than you know it.
I freaking love that, dude. And it's all, and what the coolest thing is? You guys are all really great musicians, but nobody has that ego. It's all dropped at the door. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's fucking great, man. And you can feel that, man. You can feel when people, I'm not going to mention, there's no reason to, drop names, but it's like, you can so feel the arrogance or the uppityness or you can feel that instantly in the music, because it's like, our people, I guess that's what we, coming back to what we talked about before about people hiring Borge because they want you to bring your little magic to the table for a session. It's like, I don't know. To me, it's you can see when everybody in the band, nobody is wanking it, and they all just basically want to, get the audience off, but play as a collective. And I think that is, it just, you can feel that as an audience member. It's very real when somebody's up there basically trying to micromanage a Grateful Dead jam band kind of thing versus letting it go. I mean, when, there are some times when I see them look at you and, they're basically saying, stretch out, Jerry, go ahead. And you might play like 8 bars, 16. You don't even like necessarily go off on like some ridiculous long jam. It's just you say what you need to say and then you pass the ball back. And I'm like, this is what it's about, man. This is the real deal.
Yeah, it's funny because like I'm definitely not a fan of solos where someone overstays their welcome,
No,
like
dude, you say more. I'm telling you, man. Like I'm waiting. I sort of like I'm so used to people saying more than they need to. It's you actually are so understated. So it's very interesting dynamic because, you say what you need to say and it's very cool. It's very. It strikes me as like being a seriously great musician. That being able to get somebody off without showing off facility or technique. I go back to the idea, like, I mean, Jerry, you went to San Francisco with the idea that that you were going to get like a gig and maybe just play music on the side, or were you? What I'm getting at is like if somebody took, I remember asking the late great Neil Casal in one of our interviews. I said, if somebody took music away from you, would your soul die? And he said, at first he said, it was a long answer, but when he came back around, what he really did say was, I hope I never have to make that choice. I'm sure I could find something else to do, but I wouldn't want to face that choice. And the reason is because, like, as an audience member like myself, I always assumed that musicians like yourself or anybody was looking for some state of bliss or this euphoria that the audience thinks musicians are reaching. But Krishnadas told me, he's like, I don't chant for bliss. I chant to effing live, like to survive, like to breathe.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, these mothers, like you, like Horn, I'm like, how in the hell are they dealing with this right now? Because you guys don't do this for bliss. I mean, you get paid, enough, whatever, barely enough, but you do it to live. I mean, can you talk about? I just could not imagine being stripped of that opportunity or that the ability to live and breathe and keep your soul together. Did that change for you over time? Am I just like in San Francisco, were you dedicated to finding a gig outside of music, or over time has things changed in the sense of that it really is a matter of doing it to live?
This is something that I have definitely put some thought into, and I think growing up, I exhibited a talent at a young age, but I was kind of like born into like a weird family dynamic that really didn't like understand or necessarily encourage it, especially with someone like myself that had like the ears that I know that I have like some musical ability. So after graduating from high school and even college, even though I had that talent and put some work into it, I think I didn't have that confidence that this was something that was actually like a viable thing. It took a long time. In fact, even after moving to San Francisco, which I did hold down a number, and not only held down, but also got fired from some, some day jobs.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you were pretty. You probably could do anything really. But the point is that nobody ever said to you in your family, they would never encourage you to invest what your purpose is. You just need to conform to what society says you should conform to.
That was was pretty much like the, what was instilled. And so if I could do it all over again, I probably would have, really thrown myself into it at a younger age. It wasn't until I moved to LA and even after living here a couple of years and kind of seeing the way other musicians live. And I also, when I moved to LA, there were quite a few players that really owned the studio scene. You would see certain keyboard players that would be on every session, and wow. I would think, well, geez, I don't even know how to break into that. So I started to just go to clubs and meeting people and getting inspired. And then something, it wasn't until I was in my late 30s that I just said, you know what, the only way to do this is to drop everything, take a leap of faith. And I started practicing Beethoven sonatas and getting really into classical music in my late 30s.
This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable.
And that was my the real foundation of well, if you're going to do this, then take it seriously. Then might as well take it seriously. So I did, and the phone started ringing, and then a couple years later I started playing with Jonathan Wilson, and that's kind of where it took off as far as getting to play music where it could showcase more than just my ability to keep form and play cool parts, but actually get to stretch. And so I mean, so I also, I guess, the other side of that, of what, give me a second here. I'm just trying to, as far as music being you take it away from me and I don't have anything.
Yeah.
I think maybe my upbringing served me well in the sense that I do have other interests, even though I'm not following through on those. I'd really like to make a living, as an architect or, or food, which is something I'm obsessed with.
Dude, let me tell you something, bro. I want to, and I mean, easy for me to say because, I'm just, whatever, middle class white boy. But it's just dude, I'm just gonna let you know, Jerry, that you're gonna have so many chapters in your life to do everything that you want to do. This is I mean, the cat Jim Lovelace who just came here. I feel he spent so many years in music production, doing sophisticated projects, working with luminaries, and now he's making money off, for better or for worse, he's made money off Bitcoin, and he's still doing music, but it's I don't know, to me, the spirits told you in your late 30s, hey man, now's the time to invest in full throttle, because if you go any farther without full commitment, maybe the phone won't ring. But you felt that internal universal push to do it. To me, I don't think it's, and I think it's a good thing to have all other interests. But believe me, I mean, don't beat yourself up if you haven't followed through, because knock on wood, you're going to have many years to pursue whatever you want to pursue. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to add to what I was telling you about this sort of transformation that happened with me is there was nobody that actually said to me the words, look, if you have the thing, now what you need to do is go for it. And if you do go for it and your heart is there and you're putting in the work, the universe is going to reward you.
I love it. Yeah.
There's no one telling me that, right. But I started to see in this city people that didn't have a fallback plan, like they just, and that's another cool thing, just like living in the city of the industry,
the racket.
It just, everything, it all seems legit to me now, like
so cool, man.
It seems legit to me every year that I go to my accountant and I'm, able to, say, hey, I spent this money at this club, and he's like, well, that's research. So
I love it. I freaking love that. Yeah, it's so
the government recognizes it. It's like, if the government recognizes it, then it must be legit.
We hope. Yeah, I mean, you guys. I mean, the truth is, that's a conversation for a whole nother set. But it's like, I will say, you are an in-demand enough musician that you can file your taxes as a musician or a composer, whatever it is. But I don't believe musicians got any of that first COVID stimulus unemployment package. I don't think people got that money. And to me, I think sometimes, I know, going back to the 50s and the 60s, the guys that eventually came up in the bands that we all know, Return to Forever, Weather Report, Oregon, The Fourth Way, Mahavishnu, those guys, the significance of music in our culture has changed, where, in my mind, guys like Dizzy, Train lived in Amityville, Long Island. He had a very, very decent middle-class life. Miles and Dizzy weren't millionaires, at least when they were living, but they did pretty well. And I just look at, like, the significance of music has changed in our culture because technology, we are such a data-driven society now and music, as we've been talking about here, is essentially unquantifiable. So if, in our bean counter culture, it's like, well, you can, and I know these are things you have to deal with. It's kind of like the mentality is, before you'd play a gig in a pizza parlor with bongos and a piano, whatever, and you walk out with $150, $200, 6 nights a week. You could pay your rent, you could get ahead. Then there was studio work, and now it's like, music is a musician's gift to the world, or you can pay to play, and I feel like, I mean, if that's why I do my show, Borge. I mean, I do it because I can't say that I'm an expert or in any way, and I'm not entrenched in all types of art forms, but as it relates to the musicians, especially the ones that I really respect, I mean, I will continue to do this until, and I think that that's kind of a bridge here where it's like, in your mind, like, you can go to your accountant and you can, like, revel in the fact that what you were meant to do on this planet, one of your purposes, you're fulfilling it and you're making a livelihood from it, and that's unbelievable. But I wonder about, coming out on the other side of this, what do you think needs to be done in terms of organization? Because nobody's advocating for musicians. Nobody. I mean, you'll see musicians go to Capitol Hill and advocate for other musicians, but I don't. I remember talking to Horn about this, and like, the union's not really much of anything anymore, but he was talking about kind of a musicians guild. I just feel like new opportunities have to come about for advocacy for you guys, so that not just that's the significance of music, so that the people can see and understand and feel and know how valuable you guys are to society. But I just wonder if you've given any thought to the idea of, like, how you guys can be advocated for, because it's not you don't need another hat to wear. You need people to advocate for you, and I feel like it's kind of one of my jobs, if nothing else, to get that word out there.
Well, that's very cool. And, it isn't something that I've really given a lot of thought to, as far as like a new union or a new You know, I mean, man, you know, it's so overwhelming to think about.
I don't want to get you. I don't want to get you sidetracked. Don't worry about it. I'm just saying. I
No,
think
no,
it's a necessity, though.
I'm
You know.
just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
The changes in the music industry, and yeah, it's probably never been easy, at least in the United States. You know, as far as you know, I guess maybe it depends on like what genre. You know, like the classical musicians tend to have like more. You know, the union probably works out well for.
Oh, dude,
certain
let me tell you something,
musicians,
Borge. Let me tell you, if you were, if we were, you know, back, if you know, if you were coming, if you got into the scene in 70, 71, I mean, you would be in the studio before the sun came up, and you'd leave after the sun went down, and you would be like doing jingles, commercials, studio dates, all types of stuff, and that those cats are still, again, obviously, if they didn't compose or write the music, it was just a session gig, but still, they were getting time and a half, double scale. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was gluttonous, and now it's like,
yeah.
it's gone from like glutton to like emaciated. So it's weird. It's in fact, to me, it's very. It would be deflating if I didn't have a chance to actually feel like I was doing something to push back against it. You know.
Well, you know, that this all like goes down to, or boils down to me to like the factors of the studios themselves are like finding it hard to stay open. You know, like the way record labels, you know, as far as like advances and that sort of thing, and just budgets and you know, artist development. These things don't really exist anymore.
Not at all.
And so, you know, it's a on one hand, it's a dark and scary time, and that also technology is in everybody's hands now. For, you know, a few $100s, you can have Logic or Pro Tools and, you know, a soft synth suite, and you can make things that sound pretty damn good for like something you've been working on in your bedroom.
Exactly.
And so this is, you know, I don't know if we're, you know, I am a lot like you, man. You know, like I don't listen to new music all that much, you know, because there's just so much recorded music that I'm unfamiliar with, you know, pre-1980, 1975.
I'm so, dude, pre-75, just, I mean, you could sit in that. It's a wide berth, man. You just sit in that all day. Any genre, you know?
Absolutely.
And I also, I mean, here's the point. I mean, Jerry Borge has never put out something that was done in your bedroom, because you actually have the old school ethic of, well, if it's going to be released, it's got to be good. It's got to be high quality. And then you want to be able to actually perform it in front of people. And the lack of authenticity, especially at the pop music of the day, you know, like we've been talking about, early 70s per se, that was righteous stuff, because you had everybody in the studio. You look at Lalo Schifrin record dates or Joni Mitchell. I mean, there's like 50 cats in there, string section. It was absurd, but yet it was like, and they would not take 16 takes. They had to knock out the record in a day. That being said, artists like Joni, Bruce, James Taylor, none of those cats had radio hits on their first couple of albums. So to me, it requires artist cultivation, so they don't feel like they're walking on eggshells, that they're going to get one chance at this and that's it. To me, I just, for my daughters and future generations of cats, I just want to make sure that they know who authentic musicians are, why it's that way, because some of the people that are being pushed and marketed at the pop level today cannot perform live, period. their stuff is auto-tuned or it's, whatever it is, it's just like, it's so, it's, they'll say, how did I sound? The engineer said, terrible, come up, we'll fix it. That's not
Right.
your aesthetic, man. That's poisoning the well. So, I'm not grousing here. I'm just saying, like, in your mind, you, can you talk a little bit about how you've adapted in this time in order to, help pay your mortgage, pay your bills? Like, how have you been able to sing for your supper? I feel like a lot of people have had to do things, obviously, either outside of music, but if you have chops, you can. I mean, a lot of people that have studios and they really are deeply ensconced and good quality musicians, they can be still pretty busy during this time. Would you say that's kind of the way it's been for you?
Yeah, musicians are gonna find a way to keep it going. And early on in the pandemic, I had a couple of opportunities where people would just call me, and I have enough of a little home studio that I can send them stems and tracks. So that's a little bit more the way it's been as far as recording music goes. I've had a few live gigs. I was telling you, I did this drive-in thing with Ziggy Marley.
Yeah, at the Angels Stadium. I wish I was there. That would have been
Yeah.
classic. Dude.
There was also early in June, right when production opened here in California, because of all TV and film had shut down.
Sure.
The day that it opened, this was going to be a big year for Ziggy because it was Bob Marley's 75th birthday, and there was a lot of gigs with not only with Ziggy but like his brother Stephen. We had some gigs in the books with Stephen, and so those got yanked. But Ziggy still, for his band, he booked a television studio, and we did two sets, like one set of Bob Marley music and then one of Ziggy's, and each set's over an hour. And I think you could probably just see that stuff on YouTube too. I think that's available.
Oh, I'm going to check that out immediately.
Seek TV, I think, SEEK, or what is it called? I think it's called Seek TV. But anyway, that stuff sounded, pretty high quality. And so, fortunately, I've been employed, in a situation where I was on a payroll for the last few years because of, extensive touring. And so, when this whole thing started, I was able to get that UI going right away.
The universal basic, the universal income? Is that you?
Yeah, or just unemployment.
No. So you were salaried with that? Is what a blessing, man.
Yeah, of course, I'm paying attention to it like everybody because that's supposed to come to an end until there's a new, until Congress finally gets its act together and passes the next, stimulus.
Yeah, give me a break, man. Yeah, I mean that
relief, that. So.
So let me ask you. This is interesting. This is interesting, Jerry. So you, because you were able to file your taxes as was it a musician or a composer, or because you were on the file of taxes, you were able to receive unemployment. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I paid into it, so yeah.
Exactly. Okay, I did. See, that's okay. Most cats are not. Anyway, that's mazel tov to you. I mean, that new package is just is tiddlywinks, dude. They need to send out a mass. I don't know what they're thinking, but anyway, I'm glad that was a net for you.
It's unbelievable to me, that people can be suffering the way, and not just musicians.
Exactly, it's terrible, dude. It's terrible.
All kinds of gig workers. I had friends that they were paid mostly uh, through, what is it, 1099s, where they're not
Exactly. Yeah, dude, they're left. They have
taken
nothing.
out.
That's what I meant before. The government didn't recognize those cats.
Well, I think if you did enough of that work and you put in the legwork, I had some friends that were able to get pandemic assistance through that. But it is definitely something I've thought about with, man, the people that I haven't seen in 8 months, the people that I'd run into every week at this club or this bar, there's a lot of people out there that I'm wondering, like, how are they doing it right now?
I know, exactly, dude. I mean, Jerry, before we're going to have to do set 3. It's an honor to. I just wanted you to talk about Ziggy for a minute. Like, I feel like I can't say that I'm all that hip to his original music, but I wanted you to talk about. I see other. I'm not going to mention names, but it's got to be daunting to come from, a titan of music, someone like Bob, and you see that the kids of a lot of these cats, I think just struggle under the weight of trying to be like their parent, or reach, or just they're just under the expectations from other people are so great that the pressure gets to them. Anyway, I just wanted you to talk about if in fact Ziggy is somebody who, how he straddles that fine line between, wanting to be his own man, his own singular artist, and yet paying homage to his dad, knowing that, he doesn't want to be, if his mantra is, I love my dad, but I'm not trying to live up to him. I feel like it's important for younger people to come. I don't know, Ziggy, to me, I mean, why do you think he's a good leader?
I mean, well, you to circle back to your first two questions of what makes a good leader,
Yeah.
and who's the best leader that you've ever worked with. I mean, I would be hard pressed not to say Ziggy as the best leader that I've ever worked with. And it's a really damn good question because I've worked with other children of,
luminary. Yeah, exactly.
And,
yeah.
And when you live in LA, it's like there's a lot of that.
It's like around the corner every day, right?
Yeah, you can't throw a rock without hitting one. So, but when it comes to the whole Marley legacy, I think the music is not, it's not ego music in any way.
You're darn right about that.
It's a different culture, and it's a religion, and so I think it's more like honor thy father, and not, I think there's a lot of children of artists that are they're like, oh, I don't want to be like my dad, and they'll, stylistically mix it up, or try to do something that's much different. Whereas Ziggy, every night we're playing 5-6 Bob Marley songs. But Ziggy has also had some huge hits on his own. Tomorrow People, which was
right.
Right. I was 18 when that came out.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. No, that makes it. I mean, when you can own your own thing, obviously you want the audience. So he's kind of done it too, but it's more like, you would say it's more sanctified. It's not dogmatic religion. It's devotion to the lineage of the music above anything else.
Through incredibly hard work.
Right. Right.
We rehearse if we're getting ready for a tour. All my friends are like, oh man, they're like, A, that must be a lot of fun. B, I bet it's super loose. And I'm like, let me just
let me demystify this
misconceptions for you. We rehearse 4 or 5 hours a day, 5 days a week for a month before going on the road.
Whoa.
and it's like intense scrutiny, like, but not like in a gross way. It's just more like no, we got to get this right. And fortunately, like there will be occasions where, say, we're learning Exodus, like we're going to play Exodus.
Sure.
And because of the whole tough gong connection, we'll get to like listen to stems, like I'll be able to hear exactly what the clavinet part is and get to like really like learn it to a T. So when it comes to like playing the Bob stuff, that band is very much like, well, it was never broken. We're not going to try to fix it. We're just going to try to do it as well as we can. So there's with Ziggy, it's never trying to like run away from the lineage, but it's respect, work hard at it, and then also have the same approach to his own material.
Jerry Borge, another 70 minutes in the book. You're one of the cats, man. I wish I could say that I'd be. Do you have any performances or any live streams before the end of the year that you can hit people to? To me, it's just like, it's hard not to be able, like you said, being out of routine, not seeing the same cats you would see at the clubs, and again, just not being able to really, transcend this mundane, insane world. I think that's the magic and the lucky part for all you guys. Like, no matter what kind of insanity, God forbid it doesn't impact you directly, but it's like, the ability for you to wake up the next morning after a great time. Doesn't matter, maybe you guys think you sucked, but the audience had such a great time, or you guys were on fire and everybody got off. All that other shit seems so minuscule and weak and pathetic, and I feel like that's like salvation. So not to have that magic on a consistent basis is, well, for me, obviously, it's upsetting, but I continually try to scratch my head and say, God, I hope there's some silver lining to this whole thing, because I can't see it right now. But do you have anything you want, any events or gigs or Christmas specials or anything coming up?
Well, I'm glad you asked. The one thing that's coming up is on the 15th of this month on CBS, and I'm just looking at this right now, like on this website.
Right.
There is an organization called Play On, and it's benefiting the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and Why Hunger. And basically they did this TV special where they got a few artists to play a song or two at an iconic venue that's in trouble. And the venues are the Apollo and the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville, and here in LA, it's the Troubadour.
Wow.
And so I was able to, we did a taping late last month, but it'll be airing on the 15th. It's Ziggy with Andra Day.
Wow.
Doing one of Ziggy's songs live at the Troubadour. And
Borge on key, Borge on ham and B3.
This is playing piano.
Okay, that's fine. I'm saying, like, yeah, you're in the gig. You're on the gig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Playing piano with Ziggy and Andra Day, doing his song called Justice, which was one of like a early Melody Makers song. So that'll be a part of it. I think if you go to playonlive.org, it gives like a list of the artists, and including like Bon Jovi, Emily King, all playing at like these iconic venues. So yeah, tune in.
Well, why not? Why isn't Grateful Shred on there?
Well, that's a good
kidding.
I've even told Ziggy about Grateful
I
Shred.
love, dude. They should, Shred could open for Ziggy. That would be the sickest gig, man.
Well, we'll
Yeah,
see
no.
what 2021 has in store.
Borge, let's get back on the saddle in January. We'll do another set, man. But I mean, it's you're on the righteous path, brother. And you know, I can only say that, you know, like you said, nobody told you that this was in your late 30s, that it was the time to move. It's just the universe, the universal intent, and the power of love that puts you on that path. So, you know, there are no coincidences in life, brother. So you just keep moving forward, and you know, we'll get out on the other side, and in one way, shape, or form, we'll adapt to it. But you know, if I don't speak to you before, happy holidays to you, my brother, and be safe and be happy.
Jake, happy holidays to you, man. And it's really, I love what you're doing, and I love your Instagram feed, and like to talk with a kindred spirit that's just a huge fan of music and liner notes and
Really,
stories.
honestly, I got to be honest.
And,
I'm just a huge lover of people. You know, I just love
yeah.
the cats. And you know what? I'm sorry. Like, you're a huge Dodger fan. We haven't even talked about that. I was like obsessed. I thought Horn was a Dodger fan. I forgot that he grew up in the Bay Area. But it's yeah, man. Keeps it's a mutually exclusive admiration society. So it's my honor. I'll be sending you a couple things later for you to check out. Things that couple things. But yeah, man. Stay the course, and you're one of the beacons of light. So don't ever stop.
Right on, Jake.
Yeah, be cool.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, peace and love, bro.
Do this again.
Absolutely, bro. Late.
All right, brother.
Bye, bud. Yeah.
Talk with you soon.
Later. Absolute honor to be connected to Jerry Borge. Just another part of the Los Angeles collective that will continue to inspire long after we move past the coronavirus. Everybody stay safe. That's it for now on Power Talk. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. See you later.